Bitcoin seems all the rage these days, and just like every good bubble, greed always overtakes logic for a while. But eventually, we all have to sit down at the table of reality. So, without further ado, here are 26 reasons that Bitcoin is a Bitcon. Number 1. First and foremost, it has no intrinsic value. The first 6 million were produced with little or no energy. Those that had them set out to build the value, only to sell to the greater fool for their real value. That is a pump and dump Ponzi scheme, plain and simple. Number 2. It is not any consciously different than the bankers who take intrinsically worthless fiat and build up the perceived value through bombs, laws, and taxes to sell it to us for our real value as humans in our time, talents, and energy. Just because it is voluntary is not good enough. Enron, Madoff, and Ponzi were all voluntary schemes. Number 3. Bitcoin is awful as a currency because of the massive fluctuations in its price. One guy was so desperate to get Bitcoin to catch on, he actually spent 10,000 Bitcoin on a single pizza. So an early adopter spent 10,000 Bitcoin on a $10 pizza that cost the pizza owner $1 to make? It is insane to think that now that same Bitcoin is worth as much as nearly an ounce of gold. Number 4. Look at the energy input of Bitcoin versus silver or gold. No one can deny that it took very little energy to produce the first 6 million Bitcoin, and the only reason why it takes more now is because it was programmed that way. I challenge any Bitcoin person to look at all of the time, energy, and talent that goes into finding, mining, refining, and coining a single ounce of silver and tell me that somehow Bitcoin is worth multiple of that in energy? It is also not anonymous. I have heard from the Bitcoin programmers themselves that there are ways to find out who is using them and how much they have. You know how a customer buys something online, they usually need to have something shipped to them? Do you think it takes a genius to connect those purchases to maybe illicit Bitcoin purchases? Number 6. Then there is the whole transparency aspect of it. I've already stated that Bitcoin is not anonymous, especially when one buys something with it, but the transparency of the log would be a way for the government to eventually roll out a currency that could be tracked, traced, and taxed all along the way. Your history is forever on the net. Knowing that nothing disappears on the net and that we are entering an age of super processing power, I wonder if those that seem to dance in the dark doing illicit things realize that it is inconceivable that their actions will stay secret for long. I am sure in the near future it will be almost sport to identify those that want to stay secret. Number 7. It attracts con artists. Because of its supposed anonymity and non-recourse nature, it is attracting the worst in humanity with outright fraud, drugs, and now even murder for hire. Number 8. Then there is the fact that since this is all open source, the barrier of entry for hundreds of new cryptocurrencies being created lowers the perceived value of Bitcoin itself, and it turns out to suffer what all new products have, the commoditization of the idea. Knockoffs will abound, more scams will spring forward, and more people will get hurt, and that will drive people away from the whole idea. That is, until some government backs a cryptocurrency in a post-dollar world and forces people to accept something for nothing money yet again. Number 9. Then there is the fact that this is only useful when the banking system and the dollar exist. Bitcoin needs to use banks, business, and exchanges that then need to comply to government and FINRA regulations and demands. Do you really believe that when the larger dollar Ponzi scheme collapses that people are going to trust Bitcoin? I believe people will not want anything but the real tangible goods in their hands. Silver will thrive in that environment. I cannot imagine going to a farmer now, much less after a dollar collapse, and trying to trade a Bitcoin for a gallon of milk. Or how about a gallon of gasoline? But I'm sure I could take a silver quarter and do that now, anywhere in the world, in the past, present, and future. Exchanging real value for real value is natural, but exchanging perceived value for real value is not for me. Number 10. Then there is the whole notion of Bitcoin being a cheap way of moving money. Have you ever looked into Douala? I think it is much better without the currency risk and is overall cheaper because the conversion from Bitcoin to dollars is not cheap. Number 11. Bitcoin is not really decentralized because there are so many choke points in the exchanges and redemption of Bitcoin. People in China are learning just how quickly a properly motivated government can quash the perceived value of Bitcoin. Number 12. Decentralized is not enough. It must have real value. You want a decentralized currency? Silver is awesome for that. It is private and can be stored for hundreds of years if necessary. It is accepted around the world and has been throughout history. Bitcoin cannot even begin to touch that record. Number 13. Then there is the fact that the CIA was in on this early, met with the programmers, and the very next week Mt. Gox crashed down to $0. Do we really believe that these government agencies fear Bitcoin? I believe they are simply wargaming what a post-dollar world would look like. Number 14. That leads to the mining aspect of it. Because of its nature, it is very difficult to mine Bitcoin, and only those with high-powered computers can do it. I can think of no one loving this fact more than Washington, D.C. and Wall Street, being that they have the most powerful computers and can use other people's money to mine more Bitcoin. Number 15. Then there is the Bill Gates thing that has bothered me for a while. He talks about the, quote, digital mining techniques, unquote, hurting the demand for gold.
As this price gets high and you look at a 10 to 20 year time frame, the supply equation will change. And so the bulls have to offset the fact that there'll be quite a bit, not in the near term, but over a period of time, and these people are claiming that they can predict gold prices out into the future, which certainly with equities you can feel like you can. Well, there you have to understand the innovations in digital mining techniques or some new extraction techniques, which actually I think are pretty interesting, and I doubt many people factor that in.
At the time I covered it, it did not make sense, but watching the rise of Bitcoin and the fall of gold and silver, the digital mining techniques he is talking about make sense in a globalist scheme. Number 16. Then there is the China factor. China does not want dollars anymore. Do we really think that they would want Bitcoin or anything like it? Why wouldn't they just create their own? They are going to real wealth that drives the real world powers. Why would we do anything different given the demise of the dollar? The Chinese are emptying the gold vaults and just closed Bitcoin to their citizens. Number 17. Then there are the tax implications. You may not have noticed, but there are trial balloons circulating that they are going to go after Bitcoin people for unpaid taxes on their profits. Remember, that's how they went after Al Capone. Number 18. Then there is the amount of energy that's needed to maintain Bitcoin. The amount of electricity to maintain the system must be growing, and we are heading into an age of higher energy costs and supply disruptions. The wonderful thing about silver is that all of this cheap current energy is being saved in the inert, refined silver that needs no further energy inputs. Number 19. Then there is the counterparty risk of Bitcoin. There are so many points of risk, and as people that are in the business of Bitcoin can see, it only takes one letter from a government agency and they stop dealing in it. I have already heard a couple of people dabbling in Bitcoin, losing everything with no resources because of suspected transactions. Number 20. Then there is the anti-government aspect of it. Really? It seems the Anglo-American bankers love it, including Ben Bernanke and JP Morgan. It's right up their alley with another something-for-nothing scheme. They may crack down on Bitcoin only to launch their own brand. Look at the lotto. They went after the mob for running numbers, but then made it legal for them to profit off of it. They went after Charles Ponzi and then created their own Ponzi scheme with Social Security. I am telling you, Bitcoin or something just like Bitcoin will be used to sell to the people after the dollar collapse. A new electronic worthless currency. Who knows? Maybe we'll get bonus points for watching TV and using it. They already have millions hooked on EBT cards. You get the corporations involved in the government muscle, and you could see the final realization of a digital currency where they can cut you off of it if you get out of line. How many stories have we already heard about the bank bail-ins and the IRS and the NSA messing with people's bank accounts? Having real wealth outside of the system is the only antidote for that. Number 21. Then there is the greater fool. The guy that bought Bitcoin at $7 a Bitcoin has a great incentive to promote the crap out of Bitcoin, and as more people take a shot at it, it's going to drive up the perception while maintaining a constant supply. Of course the price will go up, but what happens to the guy that bought at $1,200 for one Bitcoin? Does he really think he's going to find some more people to bid at $2,000 for that same Bitcoin? Number 22. Which brings us to the Bitcoin calling Litecoin a Ponzi scheme. It was on the official Bitcoin Wikipedia and has ever since been removed, but I have a copy of it for you here. Number 23. Enough of the lesser of two evils dialectics. The criminal elite thrive in this by offering distractions from the opposite consciousness solutions that are at our own feet. All Bitcoiners say Bitcoin is better than the dollar, but seem to shake and stumble on how Bitcoin is better than silver. And given the current run-up, I cannot see how anyone would not dump their Bitcoin for silver given the relative price between the two. Number 24. Even the most adamant Bitcoiners would never put all of their wealth in Bitcoin. When push comes to shove, they will admit that it is not something they would go all in on. I know more than a few people that have admitted to me they are selling for silver, meanwhile they are promoting Bitcoin. Watch what people do and not what they say. The gambling mentality is attracted to stocks, options, and Bitcoin. Real people don't mess with that and would rather invest in real friends, real ideas, and real wealth. Number 25. The destructibility of Bitcoin versus silver. How many stories of stolen Bitcoin and trashed hard drives have we already heard? Because it is just code, it will take very little to have it erased or corrupted. I could throw an ounce of silver into a septic tank, leave it there for years, and once I found it and washed it off, it would still retain its value. And finally, number 26. It is a digital distraction from the real wealth that will be most needed when times get tough. Thomas Jefferson said that paper is the ghost of real money. Well, I say Bitcoin is the illusion of the ghost of money since it's further removed to the real wealth of gold and silver. Just like I am sure the silver and gold ETFs were used to distract real dollars from physical gold and silver, I believe this lotto fever for Bitcoin has distracted a good many freedom-minded people away from silver and gold. The good news is that as people sour on this fad, they will look to take their Bitcoins and cash them in. And do we really believe all of these pundits that have been hyping Bitcoin are not doing just that? I mean, come on. They make a living from pushing gold and silver, but the real money is made in hyping Bitcoin, rather than the small margins on selling real metals. There will come a time when even the most die-hard promoter of Bitcoin will see the diminishing returns in pushing Bitcoin and will move on. I am sure a good many of perceptive eyes will see through this and these men that have sold their reputation for a quick buck. When the music stops, the whole world will finally realize that when it comes to real wealth, you don't own it if you don't hold it. The 2014 Silver Shield Bitcoin is the first low-premium bullion strike of the series. The Bitcoin artistically shows the lies of the intangible, debt-based, generational Ponzi paradigm we operate in, and the real solution of having real wealth in your hand when the music stops.